Hello and welcome to Utopian and Dystopian Fictions, a podcast hosted by me, Matt Leggett, a senior lecturer at the University of Winchester, where I teach utopian and dystopian fiction.
And me, Liam Knight, an independent scholar who holds a PhD in English literature from the University of Birmingham.
In each episode, we interview a different scholar, thinker, or writer, asking them to help us myth bust commonly held assumptions about utopias and dystopias.
If you like what you hear, please let us know by following the podcast, rating it on Spotify, or dropping us a message on utopian and dystopian fictions at gmail.com.
So, Liam, the good news is that we've been renewed for a second series. Yay!
Hey!
Exciting stuff. It all happened in a flash, you know. I asked you if you'd mind giving up more of your time to do editing on a second series for no money, and you, like the good aspiring academic you are, consented.
I know. What is academia and academic endeavours if not built upon the goodwill of wannabe academics, eh?
All academics collectively. Yeah. But anyway, so one of the things that we thought we'd do in what is a kind of, I suppose, like an episode six point five or whatever. I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
so a half episode, right? We thought we would just do one of those kind of derivative Christmas TV episodes, sort of counting down the best Christmas songs of all time, but not songs. Yeah, just sort of have a little look back at the first series then, as it's sort of come to an end. We were always intending to do sort of six episodes, weren't we? And
Yeah.
then just sort of give it a bit of a roundup, and then maybe also talk about some of the ideas we've got for series two, and I guess reassure all of these anxious listeners that we will in fact be back in the new year.
Yes, that sounds excellent, Matt.
And maybe we can also do a bit of a Christmassy themed discussion about utopias and dystopias, perhaps.
I think that sounds incredibly timely. Yeah, let's I said let's roll the jingle, but they've already heard it. But hopefully, the audience have our listeners have appreciated the Christmassy jingle rather than the typical jazzy one that I found.
You've got to absolutely go out and find that now. So
I know, I
you've
know.
committed to that. It's on
Well,
on record now.
well, either that, Matt, or I edit this out.
Oh yeah, you could do that.
um, right. So, Matt, yeah, let's think about our first series or season. Which one do you prefer?
I want to say season because I watch too much American TV and film, but actually I think it's series, isn't it, really?
In which case, I'm going to flip between the two. So yeah, our first series, no season, our first season. I prefer season. I think it's been hopefully really exciting, and it's something I've really enjoyed doing. It's been great to sort of catch up with you and to talk about all these really interesting chats that we've been having with really interesting people. I think our first episode, we had one of the big names of utopian dystopian studies, Raffaella Bacalini. We're talking about the critical dystopia and almost, I guess, the origins of a very influential idea that's very central to the area. Episode 2, we had Dan Van Dell, one of your colleagues, and I sort of really sort of valued his contributions to our podcast and ideas around utopia and utopianism in film. And I think something that still really stands out to me today is the idea that film itself, the idea of choosing to capture something and choosing to edit something even, and the things that we choose to retain, the things we dismiss and so on, within that is a utopian impulse, the idea to see the best in the world or to make the best out of the world. Yeah, that was just something that I thought was really powerful. So episode 3, we had Sean Seeger and his discussion of pessimistic utopianism. And again, just sort of a nice, sort of quite novel idea, maybe a new stance on utopias and dystopias that we don't normally consider. Episode 4, we had Heather McKnight, where we were talking about utopianism and activism. And again, I think it was really important to maybe have a bit of respite, maybe from theory and from literature and from texts and ideas to something a bit more active and a bit more maybe like politically charged, or something a bit more real world and tangible. I think it's really important as academics, thinkers, scholars, whatever you want to call us, to keep it real. I'm sort of air quoting, but to make sure that these really sometimes heavy, sometimes dense theoretical ideas, that we do just make sure that they're not sort of, I don't know, purely the domain of the academy, and that they have some real world impact. And then episode 5, I interviewed Sebastian Mitchell. We talked about utopias and utopianism in the 18th century, as well as sort of other historical periods, but the 18th century in particular, maybe shedding light on a time period that often goes underlooked. And then most recently, we had a chat with our second Heather Albero, where we talk about green utopianism, eco-utopianism, and sort of, yeah, again, maybe like another more practical, activist sort of centric episode, but one that, brought to my attention how animals or non-humans and the environment, how they're very much implicated in our discussions around utopia and dystopia. I'm aware, Matt, I've summarized things that you know plenty about there, but what do you want to sort of talk about there?
I'm definitely not going to repeat repeat your summary. No, that was great. Thanks, Liam. What about do you have any particular highlights? What particularly stood out to you? What was your favorite moment, I suppose, doing this?
It's hard to say, right? Because I don't want to show any favoritism or anything like that. But
oh, I do.
Okay, well, I'll ask you the same in a moment then. But I think something for me, and whenever I've been talking to either our guests, either email or before recording, or talking to people, our audience who've been engaging, I think for me, just one of the real highlights is to have what I've been calling interesting chats with interesting people. I think it's one of the real highlights, I think, for any research endeavor is often not the doing of the research itself, but it's the discussion and dissemination that's generated from doing that research. It's capturing, in some sort of senses, this podcast is capturing sort of the buzz of a conference, right? The conversations you might have with someone after they've done a paper, or after you've been to a panel together, or after you've read a paper or whatever. I mean, of course,
I guess that I was going to say, I guess that's one of the things that we kind of want to keep capturing in this series too, isn't it? Like, there are lots of things we could do, and we could do it. When we sort of started this, we thought, well, we could do a podcast about individual texts, utopian and dystopian texts and things like that, build it around that, or about theories and ideas, and in the end, it has become more, I think, almost accidentally actually more about those interviews. So I think our first interview, we were going to do like a 20-minute interview, and then we were going to talk more about what was going on. But the interviews, it just got longer and longer. That was partly my fault, I think, at the beginning, my inexperience interviewing. But I think it's actually a strength, really, to let these people who are really, frankly, more knowledgeable than us on these subjects sort of really have their say. So yeah, I think that's something we can kind of look ahead to for series 2. And one of the things that we have had, I think, over the last few weeks doing this, is we have had interest from people wanting to come on the podcast and also sort of share their research with people, which has been really lovely, I think.
I said I was going to ask you about what your highlight was for the series or for the season, and I know you're sort of saying there, the episodes have become about the interviews themselves. So was there an interview or a moment in an interview that sort of really stood out for you as a highlight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would say a couple of things, really. I would say, first of all, I absolutely loved chatting to Raffaella Bacalini in the first episode. She's, absolute icon.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting, discussion, I thought. But same with Dan, obviously, afterwards. I know Dan really well. So our chat was a little bit more kind of, I suppose, informal and a bit more casual, which I really enjoyed. And Dan, I just find fantastically interesting always on whatever subject you get him talking on. So that was great. But for me, I think that the highlight for me was actually my chat with Sean Seeger. I really enjoyed that. It's one of the episodes that hasn't been downloaded or listened to as much as some of the others. I think it needs a bit of love, and needs a bit of picking up, because I found that really wide ranging, discussion. And yeah, we did talk about sort of connection between utopia and pessimism, but we also talked about a
So
whole
much, yeah.
range of other stuff, sort of technology and things like that. But my personal absolute favorite highlight from the podcast so far was your suggestion, I think, was it a couple of weeks ago, that we have a merch drop, and that the merch drop was make, caps rather, or hats with make London pastoral again. That's going to live me with me for a while. I quite like that idea. So that was my favorite moment in terms of pure comedy. But yeah, most this is not a comedy podcast, but I thought you got a good one in there.
I do try. Maybe too hard sometimes, but thanks, Matt. That's nice to know that I brought some joy and happiness there, and maybe hopefully I don't know if I should call them readers, because it's like the cliche that our readers, our listeners, our audience, whoever's sort of plugging our voices into their lug holes. I hope they've found these chats to be interesting, but yeah, at times to be in like entertaining and humorous as well, because I think academia doesn't need to be serious all the time, or doesn't need to be dry all the time. So a bit of humor, a bit of sarcasm, I think goes far. Matt, is there anything you want to say about maybe looking forwards to season two at this point? You're saying you've had lots of interesting chats lately.
Yeah, I mean, I won't sort of name drop simply because these people may or may not end up sort of being
Mm.
interviewed. Yeah, either they might pull out or whatever, or we might not be able to fit them in. So, but yeah, I had a few people get in contact with us. I found myself constantly sort of whenever I said something to someone, not able to sort of say anything other than, oh, we should interview on the podcast as well. So I've kind of thrown out a bunch of invites, and they would all be great people to have on. So yeah, I think one of the things actually that I thought we might be able to do in a second series, is focus more on dystopia. I think we had a chat about that. We've ended up with this series being very focused on utopia. I don't, entirely unintentionally. Obviously, we started with the critical dystopia and Raffaella Bacalini, but since then we've been quite utopia heavy. Well, which has been great. I mean, I've enjoyed that. But yeah, get some more dystopia in there, I guess, for the listeners. And yeah, I think you spoke about the idea of kind of live recording, maybe like a conference panel or something like that, which
Mm.
I thought was a great idea. If we can organize that, that would be a bit of fun. But I think that also sort of chimed with something else I thought we might be able to do a bit more, which is perhaps interview multiple people, even
Mm.
maybe interview them at the same time together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just sort of mix up that format a little bit. So at the moment we've been doing the one person interviewing, and which has been nice. But actually, when you've been interviewing, the last couple of weeks or the last couple of episodes, I've kind of sort of thought, oh yeah, but there were some things I would like to have kind of followed up with and stuff. So it would be good to maybe mix it up a bit maybe next time.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
and also I've got a new arrival in the new year. So my Christmas present is a child that's on the way. He's going to sort of, completely upend my world. So one of the things we are going to do slightly is to ease off the schedule just a little bit, and maybe put out the episodes every 3 or 4 weeks rather than every 2 weeks, when we start up season two, series two, whatever we want to call it. And there's a lot of stuff that academics are reading and engaging with anyway, so I expect they probably don't want to get swamped by content as much as we're enjoying producing it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm sure our listeners will share or join me, I guess, in wishing you congratulations and good luck for the new year and sort of the bundle of joy that is to come. And
Yeah,
yeah,
gonna need that. Gonna need that good luck,
yeah.
I think.
But
No,
what's more utopian, Matt, than new life, eh?
yeah, but what life are they being born into?
Oh,
This
don't
is
say
the
that, Matt.
terrifying. This is the terrifying thing. Anyway, well, maybe we should move on to more sort of joyous things then, shall we?
Yes. Well,
So,
yeah,
Liam, we've got Christmas just around the corner. As Andy Williams once said, it's the most wonderful time of the year. So you might even call it utopian.
well, exactly.
I
And I
didn't.
guess
I stopped short of singing that. I have to say, I had to restrain myself. Um, but yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting because I was thinking about, well, what could we do as part of this roundup to make it a little bit more interesting? And I was thinking, well, it's Christmas just around the corner, and actually, the origins of Christmas are kind of utopian in a lot of ways. So we could look at the origins as sort of maybe being found in the Roman festival of Saturnalia, which is a festival which took place in late December in honor of the god Saturn,
Hmm.
where people gave each other gifts, enjoyed feasts and a break from work. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested in Saturnalia because one of the most utopian aspects of the festival was that it kind of upended the established hierarchies of sort of master and slave. So, for instance, masters would often wait on their slaves at the kind of banquets and things. And also, that part of the idea of Saturnalia was itself sort of about representing a lost golden age, like a time of abundance. So,
Yeah.
hence that kind of general feasting and revelry. So, there's obviously, I suppose, a utopian aspect to Christmas.
Mm.
And I not everyone looks forward to it, but a lot of people sort of look forward to it throughout the year. But then there are also, those other people who for Christmas, it's a pretty dystopian time of year, right? I mean, I was trying to think of a gift I could get you, and the best idea I could come up with was one of those like decision-making gizmos that they've got. Everyone's giving us gifts to one another in Terry Gilliam's movie Brazil, which is definitely the dystopian movie that everyone needs to be watching for
Mm.
Christmas. What a great movie. But yeah, so for anyone who hadn't seen Brazil, you need to watch it. The protagonist, it's a bit of a kind of Kafkaesque,
Yeah.
bureaucratic 1984. In fact, he'd called it 1984 and a half whilst they were making it before he changed, before he gave it the name Brazil. But I mean, it's wonderfully fun, and Christmas is just going on in the background the whole way through the movie. Um, but yeah, one of the things, the gifts that keep giving, that people keep trying to give him, is the same gift each time, and he's one of these sort of bumbling sort of protagonists who, I suppose, isn't quite sure, what to do with his life. He's got a kind of job that he sort of, he's quite good at his job, so he sort of sticks with it, and he keeps giving them this machine which has got a yes or no sort of decision
Yeah.
maker, and you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
sort of abdicate the responsibility for making the decision to the machine, which is exactly sort of what the movie is about as a whole, really. Um, and in Gilliam, interestingly enough, I think he sort of said something quite utopian about the movie. So in an interview, he said that to him that the heart of Brazil is responsibility, is
Mm.
involvement. He says you can't just let the world go on doing what it's doing without getting involved. So as much as it's sort of a dystopia, there's also this kind of quite upbeat sort of utopian message, I think, to the movie. Aside from the fact there's a kid at one point who's sitting on Santa's knee and responds to the question of what they'd like for Christmas with it that they'd want their own credit card. So it's a very cynical take on Christmas consumerism and
Mm.
these kinds of things, but a lot of fun nonetheless. By
Do you
the way,
think?
there's another really interesting bit on that movie, I think. I don't want to go back to Brazil all the time, but towards the end of the movie, um, Sam wakes up and his
Mm.
sort of love interest, Jill, who he's only just managed to get together with and he's been sort of chasing throughout. She's his dream girl. In fact, he first sees her in a
Mm.
dream
Mm.
and doesn't realize she's real until she appears in real life. And yeah, there's a really interesting bit where he wakes up and he's worried that she's disappeared because there's a wig that was her wig just lying on the pillow
Yeah.
next to him. And then she appears on the edge of the bed wearing just like a bow, and she says sort of Merry Christmas. And there's just something about that moment. Because throughout the whole film, he's been receiving all of these unwanted gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then here he sat with his sort of dream package, literally just packaged and wrapped up for his enjoyment. And then this is like this moment of release in the movie because it's been so fraught with that kind of bureaucratic
Mm.
dystopian nightmare up to that point. And it's just sort of released in this moment until literally it's just seconds later, the sort of armed Gestapo type sort of figures come crashing through the window, and it just sort of decimates this dream, and this is sort of the interruption of state force and violence into this kind of dream, and it's just such a wonderful kind of moment in the movie, really interesting. But yeah, sorry. Anyway, I'm enthusing too much about Brazil. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it for Christmas. What about you, Liam? Have you got any kind of Christmassy utopian dystopian texts that spring to mind?
Yeah. It's weird. Sort of when we were talking about this previously, I was trying to think about this and to sort of rack my brain. And it's interesting as well that, when we talk about utopias and dystopias, you're more utopian, right? In terms of sort of the research interests, things you like talking about, and so on.
Mm.
Whereas I'm more dystopian, and you've got a dystopian example to hand there, whereas I maybe have utopian examples more to hand. I don't know if that says a lot about my stance on Christmas. And also, before I get into that,
Yeah,
actually, just
are you a fan of Is this what you're saying? Is it the most wonderful time of year for you
I
then, is it,
mean,
Liam?
look, if it's been put to music, it's probably true. No, I do quite like Christmas. I think gift giving is sort of a really, I don't know, just a really powerful thing for me. And
Is it just me then that just finds the idea? I'm looking at the time now. I mean, we're recording this on the 9th of December, and I'm thinking, holy hell, how am I gonna get my Christmas shopping sorted? And now it's not even like the joy of going around the shops anymore. It's literally the pain of sitting for 2 hours in the evening, racking my brains online trying to work out what to get people. I don't, I like the actual day itself. Don't get,
yeah,
I
yeah,
do I
yeah, yeah.
do genuinely like Christmas Day, but in the lead up to it is quite painful in a lot of ways.
Don't get me wrong, I have struggled finding sort of appropriate gifts and presents for like some friends and family members, but I think Dan was saying in his episode that he's looking at gift giving, isn't he, as sort of his next
Oh yeah.
project, and maybe arguing that there's a utopian element there. And again, you were sort of talking about Saturnalia and sort of that as an origin for Christmas, and then obviously again Dan's episode again, I was thinking about his sort of his in to utopia is through religion and through faith. And although I maybe don't share his faith or his religion or his views on, there's still, I guess, at Christmas and sort of that link to Christianity and sort of maybe any utopian elements contained therein. But I digress. I'm going off on one. My Christmas movie recommendations, I guess, uh, coming from a more utopian angle or just reading utopia in these Christmas movies. Um, I just wanted to talk really quickly about Whoville from The Grinch. Now, admittedly, I can't remember the last time I watched The Grinch or what even its full title is. I can't remember. Yeah, the Grinch that stole Christmas or whatever it's fully called. But I just wanted to think about Whoville as this utopian space. I seem to remember, everyone's just incredibly pleasant towards one another. They're full of gift giving. They're full of that sort of act of exchange, and there seems to be maybe like a parallel there. Maybe I'm like writing a conference paper now as I'm talking out loud, or writing a paper as I'm talking out loud. But we keep on returning to the one who walks away from Omelas in this first season, and I'm wondering if there is like a parallel between Whoville and Omelas, in that for everyone in Omelas it is a utopia bar one person. And Whoville is a utopia for all of the Who's, I think they're called, bar one person, the Grinch. Now, I guess whereas Le Guin invites us to, do we walk away, do we stay, and what do we do with this knowledge and so on, Dr. Seuss gives us maybe a slightly more straightforward and more twee response, which is, drink the Kool-Aid and very much be part of the many, and don't be the one who's suffering, even though his suffering is maybe more internalized. I don't know. I digress.
Are you trying to indicate? Is this where you're trying to insinuate that I'm the Grinch in this, Liam?
Absolutely not, Matt. I would not say that. Although it does bring me to a second fictional character who, again,
What,
maybe you don't
me?
want to be. No, you are.
Oh,
Who
okay.
you don't want to be compared to. And this is where maybe I've just got more to say or more feelings around utopianism and Christmas films. My favorite Christmas movie of all time is The Muppets Christmas Carol, for so many reasons. But if I was to go back to Charles Dickens originally, I'm not going to argue that A Christmas Carol is a utopian text. I think that's too much of a stretch. But I think the idea of, it's a redemption narrative, right? It's the idea that, someone or something awful can be improved. It can be changed for the better. Again, maybe there's a lot of Christian sort of undertones to that part of like the Christmas message in the story. But I still think within that there is a degree of utopianism, just the belief in better, the belief in difference, which again has been maybe something that's come through in quite a lot of our interviews. That in itself, I think, is quite a utopian element of the movie and or of the book, sorry, and is one that again maybe if I wasn't just sort of talking about this a bit freestyle, I'd want to sort of pull apart a little bit more and to read up on a little bit and see if anyone's sort of thought about this previously. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any ideas on A Christmas Carol as a utopian text or bearing utopian elements?
I mean, I think, we could make that argument about a lot of kind of Christmas texts. I mean, the other one that's sort of springing to my mind is that the classic, It's a Wonderful Life,
Mhm.
which again, uses this kind of mechanism of a kind of Christmas as a moment to reevaluate what's important in one's life, I suppose. And so we could look at Christmas in that way. But then I'm going down the kind of dystopian route again, and I'm thinking about uh, you know, I wish it could be Christmas every day. I keep thinking about Christmas songs, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how awful the world would be if it was Christmas every day. Um, I don't know. Having said that, there's something then about Christmas, isn't there, that it's powerful because it only happens once a year, right? If it did happen every day, it would be just dreadful. So I think that there is something about, going back to sort of Saturnalia a little bit, that there are these spaces of kind of utopian hopes and moments that might happen, um, where everything else is just suspended, and the rest of life, just sort of you get this entirely different environment, and it can be different for every person, because ultimately Christmas, the idea is you go and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose there are some people who kind of are forced to go and see family members who they don't want to see and these sorts of things, but I think in general, people try to do what they want to do for Christmas. And it's that sort of moment of kind of suspension of everything else.
Yeah.
And for this one moment, everything else becomes kind of less important than, family, friends, and those kinds of things, which is its kind of utopian quality, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, even if it's a kind of antidote to the horrifically commodified, commercialized lead up month, which almost,
Yeah.
which dwarfs it in many ways. But you do get this, at least this the perhaps Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day. I think you do get those 3 days of respite, that are quite joyous, are utopian, and
Mm.
they're made more utopian by the fact that you you know it's your last moment before you've got to go back to work or whatever, and go back to the grind.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the break from the norm, isn't it? That I guess it is that utopian release, and yeah, you're right. If it really was Christmas every day, then we wouldn't have that moment of release. And maybe it only seems so utopian because it contrasts with the drudgery of the day-to-day grind. To put it in quite bleak terms.
I'm not,
Um,
I'm not that pessimistic about it. I mean, I do like Christmas music, I have to say. I have to put my hands up to that. I mean, I normally like really I like prog metal, right? It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
like the total opposite of like that sort of music. And yet when December hits, I'm quite happy to hear Christmas tunes on the radio. So there is something powerful about that. I don't know what it is, but I've always been like that. I've always liked that. So
Mm.
I'm not total cynic about Christmas, but
You're,
maybe it's
you're
just
you're
a
not a
lack of
total
time.
Ebenezer Scrooge then.
No,
No,
no.
good,
And
good.
as I said, genuinely, I try to buy presents with thought behind them. I really genuinely do that. And, you know, you get a lot of people that don't do that, and that's absolutely
Mm.
fine. But that is something that I think is kind of important for me. So I'm not a total Scrooge. But yeah.
I just want to say one final word then on A Christmas Carol and utopianism, which, as I said when I was like getting into A Christmas Carol, my favorite Christmas movie of all time is The Muppets Christmas Carol. And I think obviously Dickens's original text, can be quite bleak and its messages are quite serious. And of course, The Muppets, it still retains some of that, but also it's very light-hearted. It's very silly. It's full of song. And again, I know Dan was saying in his episode about sort of musicals, there being a utopian element to musicals. But really, I think I would just quite like to live in a world with the Muppets. I think that should be really that for me would be
You'd
quite
fit
utopian.
right in, Liam. You
I,
must have known I was going to say that when you set that up, surely. You'd fit right
I,
in.
I'm the biggest Muppet going. You're right. You're right. Although obviously, the maybe the dystopian element to the Muppets Christmas Carol is that there is indeed no cheeses for us Mises, which is the most heartbreaking lyric I think ever written.
No comment. Is that the end of the episode now? Is it that's the end? That's the end of the series now. That one. That's it.
It's definitely under that topic of conversation, but
All right. Go
um,
home. Go home, everyone.
is there anything else you want to add that I'll say maybe on Christmas or away from Christmas, or in terms of like the meta discussion?
No, not really. I mean, I think that's it. I just think, looking forward to series two, and and I think there are some things we wanted to do with series one that we just, maybe didn't have the not the time, but the space to do, and hopefully we can come back strong. And if anyone does want to support the channel, please
The
do.
channel,
Just
the channel.
the channel. Oh no, not channel. The podcast. Yeah, I saw. I'm doing your kind of like and subscribe thing,
You
aren't I?
are, you are.
Well, this is the main message then, is that if you want to support us, do subscribe, do rate and follow. Oh, rate and follow. That's it. See,
Yeah, well done.
too much YouTubing. Do rate and follow and do comment as well. We will talk about your comment at some point, because there aren't that many of them. So, we're not wading through stuff. So if there's stuff you want to see us do in series two, um, or if you just want to, give us a kind of heads up on things you liked that we were doing, that would be great to hear from you. But otherwise, yeah, I look forward to catching up with you on the other side of Christmas.
Yeah, well, from me, Matt, Merry Christmas, and to our faithful listeners who have hopefully enjoyed this very rambly, all over the place Christmas special. Merry Christmas to you as well. I hope, uh, if anything, you can all have a bit of a rest and a break.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
See you in the new year.